Hi everyone, I'm Dan. I'm a former U.S. Consular Officer and current visa consultant with UDETI. Today we're going behind the interview window to talk about something applicants are always curious about: red flags. These are the little things, whether it's in your body language, maybe the way you answer a question, or something in your documents that can make an officer stop and think, I need to dig a little deeper here. A red flag doesn't always mean a refusal, but it does mean your interview just got a little more challenging. So let's talk about what they are and, more importantly, how to avoid them. So when officers talk about red flags, we're not just talking about personal judgment or gut feelings. We're talking about specific signals, things that, based on training and experience, suggests that there might be more to your story. A red flag could be about credibility, whether your answers seem consistent and believable. It could be about eligibility, whether you actually meet the legal requirements for that particular visa class. Or it could be about risk, whether there's a higher chance you might overstay or work without authorization or do something outside your visa category. Now, these signs aren't an automatic no. However, they are cues for the officer to ask more questions, compare your answers to your application, or look a little more closely at your documents. And sometimes clearing up a red flag is as simple as giving a confident and truthful answer. So the first red flag category we're going to look at is body language and demeanor. Now, officers know people get nervous, and that's normal. But there's a huge difference between natural nerves and body language that makes an officer question whether you're being straightforward. For example, avoiding the question altogether, changing your tone suddenly when a certain topic comes up, or giving a rehearsed smile but not answering directly, those can all prompt some follow-up questions. Overconfidence can also raise eyebrows. If you lean in too aggressively, start speaking over the officer, or seem defensive, it can feel like you're trying to control the interview rather than answer the question. So the safest approach: keep your posture open, make comfortable but not forced eye contact, and focus on listening carefully to that question before answering. You don't have to be perfectly relaxed. You just have to show that you're present, engaged, and that you're telling your story truthfully. The second red flag category is those problematic or inconsistent answers, where what you say during the interview doesn't quite fully add up, even if it's not a flat-out ineligibility. This can happen if your details start to shift a little without explanation. For example, you say your program starts in September, but later during the interview you mention arriving in October without clarifying why. Or you say you'll live on campus, but you later mention you've already signed a lease for an apartment in a different city. Sometimes it's just a small slip, but from the officer's perspective, these shifts can mean the story isn't clear, and that's enough to start digging a little deeper. Officers will often ask similar questions in slightly different ways to check for consistency. If your answers keep changing, it looks like you're not fully prepared, or that there's more to the story than what you're telling. So what's the fix? Well, review your application details, review your travel plans, and review your funding before the interview. If something changes after you've submitted your application, be ready to explain it clearly and confidently. Now, I'd love to hear from you all. Have you ever been asked a tricky follow-up question in your visa interview? Tell me in the comments. I'd like to hear your experience. All right, so the third red flag category we're going to look at today is document issues. And this doesn't always mean fraud. Sometimes it's simply that the paperwork you present doesn't quite match your story. For example, your bank statement shows a much lower balance than what you've said is available for your trip or for your studies. Or your employment letter is dated months ago with no confirmation that you even still work there. Even small gaps like this can start to raise some questions. It's also important to remember, visa interviews are verbal. The officer's decision is made primarily on what you say and how you say it. If you push a thick stack of papers at the officer uninvited, that can be a red flag itself, that you're trying to overwhelm them with volume instead of clarity. That sometimes leads to more skepticism, not less. So the best approach is to bring only what's necessary, make sure it's current, and keep it organized. If the officer wants to see a document, they'll ask for it. And when they do, you should be able to hand it over quickly and confidently. So what actually happens when an officer spots one of these red flags? Well, in most cases, it's not going to be an instant refusal. A red flag is a signal to slow down, ask some more questions, and give the applicant a chance to explain. Sometimes a single follow-up question can clear it up right away. Now, if the officer still isn't satisfied, they might issue a 221G, also known as administrative processing, to request specific documents or verification before making a decision. Or, especially if the red flag points to a clear ineligibility, they may just refuse that application on the spot. So the key thing to understand is that officers are looking for clarity. A red flag isn't about just catching you, it's about making sure the information they have is reliable enough to approve your visa. The good news is most red flags are avoidable with the right preparation. So first, know your story. Be clear on your travel purpose, your timeline, and how you're funding your trip or your studies. If something changes after you submit your application, be ready to explain it and explain it simply. Next, practice answering out loud. Visa interviews move very quickly. Officers often have to make their decision in just a few minutes. Practicing will help you give clear and confident answers without rambling. Also, keep your documents minimal, but ready. Bring only what's relevant and current. If the officer asks for something, hand it over quickly. Don't shuffle through piles of paper. And always remember, stay calm under pressure. Even if you get a tough follow-up question, take a breath and answer directly. Confidence isn't about never pausing, it's about staying composed. Small adjustments in how you prepare and present yourself can make the difference between raising a red flag and sailing through the interview. So just to recap, officers watch for 3 main types of red flags: body language and demeanor, inconsistent answers, and document issues. And most of the time, these can be avoided with the right preparation. If you would like personalized feedback on your answers, your documents, and even how you present yourself at the window, I offer one-on-one visa consultations and mock interviews where we go through exactly what an officer would possibly see in your case. You'll find that link in the description below. And if this video helped you, be sure to hit like. And if you want more insider tips like these red flags, also make sure you hit subscribe. Hit that bell so you don't miss our next visa strategy video. Thanks for watching, and please remember, step up to the window ready, step away approved.